Hi everyone, my name is Leanne and today I'm going to be talking about some children's non-fiction. So there are so many kinds of non-fiction out there for children, so many subgenres even kind of within that. But today I wanted to talk to you about some of my favourites, but also some children's non-fiction that is on my radar. And seeing as we are in the midst of the Irish Readathon, I'm going to kick things off with quite a few books by Irish authors. Kicking things off with Break the Mold by Sinead Burke. So Sinead is a teacher and activist, and she is a little person as well. And she draws on her own experiences, moving through a world that wasn't built for someone with a body like hers. She looks at the various challenges that presents her with, but also the opportunities that it gives her, and the ways it has positively impacted her life. Like, she's a super organized person because she is always thinking about how to navigate situations that other people don't even need to think about. And while she is drawing on her own experiences, she's also encouraging children to look towards themselves and look at what their differences are and how to celebrate and embrace their differences. It's a book about believing in yourself and shaping the world into a fairer, more inclusive place. And throughout this book, Sinead also highlights a number of other individuals who are doing the same thing, celebrating their differences. Sinead was the first little person to appear on the cover of Vogue. She was the first little person to go to the Met Gala, and she is also responsible for the inclusion of a term for little person in the Irish language. There was no word for it before until Sinead noticed this and pushed for a word to be created. And it ended up being the very literal translation of little person, Dinna Beag. This is also highly illustrated by Natalie Byrne, and the way her illustrations are incorporated are just so fantastic. Highly recommend this book. Next, I would recommend Breaking News by Nick Sheridan. This is also highly illustrated with illustrations by David O'Connell. So Nick Sheridan is a real-life news journalist, and in this book he is teaching children how to separate fact from fiction. Children are getting their information and news from so many different sources, whether that is the TV, whether that is print media, whether that is social media, TikTok, and it can be really confusing trying to figure out which information is accurate, which information is credible. In fact, I think that's something that a lot of grown-ups struggle with as well. The author doesn't shy away from the fact that the news can often be about really upsetting topics, and recommends what children can do if they feel scared or hurt by what they're hearing in the news, but equally how to find further information if they want to understand more. It's a book that really encourages a lot of interaction from the child reader, and not only does Nick teach children how to decipher news for themselves, but he also offers an insight into the whole kind of news and journalism industry. What different kinds of reporters there are, what they do, what kind of skills you might need to be a reporter. And I definitely feel like this book is going to be inspiring some journalists of the future. A couple of books that I haven't read yet but would love to get to include Girls Can Play, which is a book all about Irish sportswomen. This is totally just combining so many of my interests. Being interested in children's books and particularly children's non-fiction, being super into sport and, loving powerful women. And I really enjoy those kinds of books that highlight loads of women from history and give you a taster of what their life is like. We have so many amazing sportswomen in Ireland, including Sonia O'Sullivan and Katie Taylor, to name just two of many. So I would be really excited to read this book and the follow-up to it to learn more about Irish women that I love, but also discover some Irish sportswomen that I'd never even heard of before. And I think that's the real beauty of books like that, is discovering new people to be inspired by. I also wanted to talk about Dara McAnulty's books, starting with Diary of a Young Naturalist. This is his memoir about his experiences of being an autistic teenager, coping with changes in his home life and his school life, his experiences of mental health, and also his pursuits as a conservationist and environmentalist. I've not read this one yet, but it explores his experiences of how wildlife has impacted his life, his connection with wildlife, and why it is so important that we preserve the natural world around us. He also has a larger gift book style book called Wild Child. This one is fully illustrated in full colour. The book is split into 5 sections, each section being a different habitat, and in each section Dara gives the reader loads of information and facts about the different kind of natural things that can be found there, whether that is trees, flowers, plants, or animals. And each section has an activity for the child to take away as well. And if you have a child in your life that is interested in all those kinds of wildlife topics, or you, like me, are an adult reader that loves children's books, particularly those about animals and wildlife, then I think you would also love The History of the World in 100 Animals by Simon Barnes. This is also fully illustrated, full colour, with illustrations by Fran Preston Gannon. This has quite a what it says on the tin title. This is The History of the World, told through 100 different animals. This is a children's adapt of a book that came out for grown-ups, and I love that kind of method of publishing. There are so many incredible animals in here. I learned so much from reading this even as a grown-up reader. There's such a variety in the kinds of animals. You know, there's birds in here, there's mammals, there's reptiles. And this book really explores the relationship between this wildlife and animals throughout history. And oh my gosh, the illustrations are stunning. Another children's non-fiction book that is an adapt of a book for adults is Black and British by David Olusoga. I know lots of people on BookTube are a fan of his non-fiction book for grown-ups and got a lot of value from it, found it a really informative experience. And this is a version for younger readers. But I think equally, if you are a bit intimidated by the size of his adult non-fiction book and would like a bit of an intro before you feel equipped to tackle that and the increased amount of information that there is in that book, I think there's absolutely no shame in going to the children's book first. This book is a history of Britain, giving recognition to significant Black figures throughout British history, and also acknowledging the terrible things that a number of white British people did to Black people throughout history. It really looks at many forgotten histories, things that are swept under the rug, and it is a really informative book. I'd also like to recommend You Are a Champion by Marcus Rashford. I think this is such an incredible book, and this is co-written with Carl Anka, who is a journalist that I greatly admire. I'm a little bit biased because I'm a huge Manchester United fan, but I think Marcus Rashford is such an inspiration for so many kids out there. And this is quite similar in intent to Break the Mold. I think if you have a child reader who enjoyed one of these, then they would definitely enjoy the other. Like in Break the Mold, Marcus is drawing on his own experiences, his own upbringing, his own experiences of being a Black man, his own experiences of being a Premier League footballer, his experiences of growing up in poverty. And he's sharing those experiences really openly, but equally encouraging children to look at their own experiences, celebrate their own differences. And the messages he conveys in this book are really encouraging children to be confident, to have belief in themselves, to aspire to whatever it is they want in life and know that they can achieve it. And this is another one that really does encourage the child to interact with the book as well. Like it gives the child a lot of things to actively think about and get involved in. Definitely highly recommend this one. And the final book I want to talk about is A Galaxy of Her Own, Amazing Stories from Women in Space by Libby Jackson. This is also fully illustrated, and it is one of those books that takes a look at significant female figures from history. So like in Girls Can Play, where it was looking at sportswomen from Irish history, in this we are looking at women who contributed to space exploration in some way. And this includes astronauts, but it also includes so many different kinds of jobs like physicians, mathematicians, seamstresses. So many women that have been forgotten throughout history, and it's important to give them that acknowledgement. And I learned about so many women that I had never heard of before from this book. So as with a lot of these books, I think, yes, they are intended for children, but you can get so much from them as a grown-up reader as well. And the illustrations in this are absolutely gorgeous. And they've all been done by students from the London College of Communication. So yes, this book is a great way to learn about so many different women from history, from so many different parts of the world. Highly recommend this one. So there we have it. They are all of the children's non-fiction books I'm going to talk about today. But if you have any further recommendations for books that you want to suggest, do leave them down below in the comments, because there are so many. I really am just hitting the tip of the iceberg here, and I definitely wanted to give some particular attention to some Irish books as we are in the midst of the Irish Readathon as well. All of the books that I've mentioned will be linked down below in the description if you want to find out more about them. And if you don't have anything in particular to say but want to let me know you're here, leave me some sort of space related emoji so I know that you're around. I hope you guys are doing well, and I will speak to you in my next video.